Welcome to The Stacks, a podcast about books and the people who read them. I'm your host, Tracy Thomas. Our guest today is Morgan Jerkins. Morgan is the author of a collection of essays entitled This Will Be My Undoing that came out in 2018. And this month, she released her second book, Wandering in Strange Lands, about Black migration and the histories of Black people that have largely been kept hidden. Morgan is also the senior editor at Zora and a visiting assistant professor at Columbia University's School of the Arts. Remember, everything we discuss on today's episode can be found in the link in the show notes. Before we get to the episode, I want to take a moment to recognize some of the newest members of the Stacks Pack. These are people who contribute a small amount each month on our Patreon to help keep the show up and running, and they earn perks like our virtual book club and more for doing so. This week, I'd like to say an extra special thank you to Miriana Como, Michaela, Lisa Powers, Caitlin Vicora, Lara Goodrich Ezor, Shannon Beck, Colleen Kiley, Alex Perlin, Kathy Miller, Jess Seagraves, Stephanie Ash, and Erica Bray. I cannot overstate this. If it weren't for the Stacks Pack, there would be no show. So thank you so much for your contributions to this podcast. If you want to join the Stacks Pack, head over to patreon.com/thestacks. Okay, now it's time for my conversation with Morgan Jerkins. All right, everybody. Well, we're here today with Morgan Jerkins. Morgan's brand new book is called Wandering in Strange Lands. Morgan, welcome to the Stacks.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm very excited that we get to talk about your book. I didn't really know what to expect with your book because when you get it, it's sort of like this could be a whole lot of things. And it exceeded my expectations and my imagination of what it could have been. So I'm super excited. Will you just tell people in about 30 seconds or so kind of about the book?
Right. So growing up in New Jersey, I realized that my family had a lot of omissions and gaps with the things that they believed, the customs and the traditions that they cultivated. And I didn't realize that this was a result of moving away from our ancestral homelands. We were part of one of the greatest cultural shifts in American history. From 1910 to 1970, millions of African Americans migrated from the South all across the country to flee from racial terrorism. And my family was one of them. But because of that, we lost. And we had these omissions now. So what I did was I went back and I did this like reverse migratory route, if you will, from the South, Midwest, and West to forge these conversations and bridge the gaps between those who fled their ancestral homelands and those who remained in order to talk about systemic violence, land displacement, land loss, cultural erasure, and lack of documentation. And in the process of talking about these multitudes of Black American experiences, I was also able to detail 300 years worth of my family history.
Yeah. I mean, so what's so cool about what you've done is that you've included this broader history, but then also connected it sort of to your personal history. And I know your background is in kind of personal essays. I know that I read your first book also. So I'm curious, kind of, is that how you decided to enter the work, or did including your personal family make it easier or harder for you to write this book?
That's a great question. So after I wrote This Will Be My Undoing, I was trying to move away from my personal essayist background. I actually got into professional writing in 2014 because I couldn't get a job in publishing or in digital media as an entry-level person, and I started writing online. And at the time, yes, I was building a portfolio, but I also was at this, the short end of like vitriol against young women of color because of our hot takes or because we were confessionalists, if you will. When people didn't realize that was one of the only ways we can get a foothold in the industry. So after the success of my first book, I wanted to expand my repertoire and I wanted to be taken more seriously. And I did all of this research for the second book, and the first couple of drafts weren't coming together. I did not include my family in the first couple of drafts. And my editors were like, you have to. You have a stake in this, right? And I don't look back, I'm like, well, duh. But because I exposed so much of my interior life in my first book, psychologically, I just shut up like a clam. And so it took a couple of drafts. It took a lot of come to Jesus moment. It took a lot of crying to be like, okay, you got to put yourself in this again, because otherwise there's no anchor and it's going to feel so distant and it's going to feel a little bit hollow. And yeah, I was able to pull it together, thankfully.
I can't even imagine this book without that, because it does feel so, I mean, the version that I read, obviously, like what's out in the world now is so connected to your family and to, I mean, not just you personally, but also the generations of your family. I guess,
Yeah.
so I guess my question then is, what was the book like before?
Oh, it was like academic collages of meditations. Like there's one chapter where I speak about water. There is no personal anecdote. It's a part of a larger chapter where it's like a meditation of water, meditation on this. Very disconnected. Very much like if you know music, like staccato, like
Yeah.
the flow isn't there. And so that's what it was like before. And I went through 2 full drafts of the book. And then my editors called my agent up. And my agent's like, can I call you up? And I was like, oh, no. And then we had to have a whole meeting where I came into the office. I was just like, I'm scared. My book deal's going to get canceled. I can't pull it together. It was a lot.
God. So they tattled on you.
Oh, because we need to bring her in now because we go through 2 full drafts of all of this research and we're still hitting the mark. Let's not waste our time and let's go to a 3rd draft. Let's actually get together again and start it. Because mind you, when I wrote the book proposal for this, if I show you the book proposal, you could be like, what? By the way, for audience members, book proposals, you have to submit that for a nonfiction project. It was not like this at all. I got inspiration for this book when I watched the movie Get Out. And I know you're probably thinking, like, Get Out? How? Well, there's a climactic scene towards the end of the movie where the black male protagonist has his hand wrapped around the white female protagonist, his girlfriend, who's actually trying to kill him, and a police car pulls up. And I was watching this movie while I was in Magic Johnson Theater in Harlem, and everyone in the theater just collectively gasped. And I was astounded because I thought to myself, I'm not a native Harlemite, and I know there's probably some people in here aren't natives either, but we have this collective instinctual fear of the land, of being displaced, of systemic violence for the powers that may be. And I wanted to first do a book that was like just a melange of the fears and the intergenerational traumas of Black people. And when I spoke to 2 scholars who are based in Boston, Dr. Carrie Greenidge and Kendra Field, they were like, oh, this sounds like a migration story. So even the book proposal was just a kernel of what I was about to get into.
Wow. Okay, so so one of the things, I don't think there's really spoilers in this book because it's nonfiction, but one of the things I really, really want to talk to you about as someone whose family is Creole from Louisiana, I'm curious about the kind of, I guess personally for you, the shame or fear that you might have felt in talking about your Creole family or like the Creole people, but also in Black people who owned other slaves. There's a lot of stuff in this book that's sort of like icky. Maybe we don't want to talk about in mixed company. So I'm curious about what that was like for you, especially as you then had to tie it to your own personal life as opposed to just being able to report on it historically speaking.
Right. Where in Louisiana is your family from?
Baton Rouge. Well, I know that my dad was born in Baton Rouge, but past my dad's generation, I know my grandparents were born there also, but past that, I know nothing.
Okay, cool. I only knew that I was Creole about 4 or 5 years ago. My father is, oh man, how old is my father? My father is will be 69 this year. And I didn't know I was Creole until 4 or 5 years ago, just something that was talked about. I lived in South Jersey. I didn't know any Creole people. From that context, it was if you say you're Creole, you're a light-skinned Black person who thinks they're better than everyone, and you want to distance yourself from your Blackness or just add a dash of it into your story of your Frenchness, your Spanishness, and your indigeneity. And so for me, when I heard this, I was like, well, why was I never told this? My dad's family migrated to Fayetteville, North Carolina, so there wasn't any, and it's not a sizable Creole population either. So all these different migrations, something was lost along the way. My grandfather on my father's side, he spoke French. My dad doesn't speak French. We're from St. Martin Parish, which is a large Francophone speaking population in the Acadiana region of Louisiana. And the Louisiana section was so hard for me for a couple reasons. One reason is I'm on the internet, and I know what it's like for people to take parts of my work, small snapshots of thousands words long chapters that conclude research, and to mangle it, to just stamp it out because they want to make a point or because they're just being cruel. Right. And when you're talking about the fact that yes, Creole at one point was distinct from Black because Louisiana, prior to being a part of the United States via the Louisiana Purchase, it was its own distinction. They had these own communities. To find out that, you know, when I was growing up, I learned my idea of Black history was so simplified in a public school system.
Sure.
It was your ancestors were captured near the west coast of the African continent. They came over via the transatlantic slave trade to the colonies. You know, slavery, emancipation, Reconstruction, Harlem Renaissance, civil rights, and then Obama. That was it. Right. I never learned that there were Black people who existed, who were free prior to Lincoln. I did not know there were free people of color who had their own communities. I did not know that free people of color and Black people owned slaves, participated in the plantation economy. In fact, thousands of them. And that disturbed me because when you are taught that Black at a certain point in American history automatically equals slave, then you posit your identity or your legacy as completely opposite from whiteness in terms of access to power and capital and just influence. Sure. So when I went down to Louisiana and realized that, no, your people actually oscillated somewhere in the middle and they actually participated in the plantation economy, I was uncomfortable. And I wanted readers to sit with that discomfort with me. And to realize that so much of this journey, yes, it's unpacking things, but what is the weight of that on your emotions? Sure. It's not just some revelation and just some like, wow moment. It's like, no, this actually hurts. And sometimes investigation does hurt when it gets personal, it gets too close for comfort. But I had to tell myself that if I try to obscure this part, if I try to anesthetize these certain portraits that I'm giving, then it's counterproductive to the whole book in general. I'm just basically undoing all my work as I'm writing it.
Right. I mean, and you say that in the book throughout. You're kind of like, didn't know that. Like, whoops, this gets like, weird.
Yeah, so it's like, get weird. Like, I don't like this. And, you know, I wanted people to understand that there were moments where I was alone a lot. When I was going to certain parts of the Deep South, when I was in Oklahoma, I was in my, you know, hotel room alone with just my recordings and my photos, and there wasn't anybody sitting beside me. And in those certain ones, now granted, there were other times people were around, but there were a lot of times also where I was just by myself, and I wanted people to understand what that's like. Right. You know, to not only do this work, but to do it in many parts alone and as a Black woman, and put myself into these precarious positions, uncomfortable positions intellectually, but also in dangerous positions, just driving around.
Sure. Yeah. And you talk about that a lot, about the danger of doing the research and kind of the fear of going into these places without knowing, A, what you're going to find out, and B, without knowing who you're going to meet or what their relationship to you is going to be. I know as a reader, I felt a lot of kind of embarrassment, I think maybe is the right word, that I didn't know a lot of the stuff that you were talking about too, you know, and I felt like I say shame. I don't know if that's the right word, but for example, I did not know of the Gullah people. I did know of Gullah Island, but I did not know that was a thing. And I kind of, when I read that part, I was like, you should be terrified or mortified to admit that publicly, that you know, like Binya from Gullah Island, but you don't know.
Right. But I didn't either. I say in the book, the two snapshots of knowledge that I had about Gullah Geechee people was Gullah Island, and the fact that one of my closest friends has a grandmother who was of Gullah descent. Right. The thing is that it's not by design that people of African descent in this country, and even white people or anybody, do not know this much about the multiple ethnic groups or sub-ethnic groups under African Americans, the multiple experiences. Right. It's not by design. Right. And that's what I want people to understand is, like, it comes down to the lack of documentation, or when there's documentation, it's not in these communities' hands. The fact that we often, not we, but the bigger we, devalue oral histories, when really that's all what Black families had at the time. Right. You know, and also this continual displacement that's happening. So that's what I want people to understand. It's like, if you feel shame, for all you readers out there, if you read it and you come across something like, why didn't I know that? It's like, yeah, of course there's Google and of course there's Wikipedia, but we don't live, if you're an American, we don't live in a country that not only values our lives to the fullest extent, but values our histories as well.
Sure. And you'd have to know to even Google that. Like, I would have to know, I'd have to think back to Gullah Gullah Island and be like, where does this come from? Which was a show that came out when I was a kid. So, not like I think about it every day, but it's true that it's not designed for us to know that information. I'm curious. I rarely ask this question because I almost always feel like the answer is never exciting or interesting to me, but I have this feeling that you're going to have a good answer, which was, did you have a particular audience in mind when you set out to write this book?
You know what? It's interesting when you say that, because if my book was initially supposed to come out in May, then the pandemic happened and the lockdown happened and the protests happened.
Right.
And I think if the book would have came out in May 12th, I would have said everybody. You know what I mean? Because I'm selling a book here, right?
Right.
But I think for me, it's like after the protests happened, I just realized that there's a cyclical nature to what is going on. And it's because our country has not reckoned with the devastation brought about on Black communities, the repercussions of the disconnect of African American memory, and why we have to keep moving in the first place, and why there's this Black rage, and then there's Black progress, and then there's white backlash to that, right? For me, it's like, I want this to reach, for example, Black people who were always curious about their elders, but they were not sure, and they were like, I don't know if they're lying anymore after reading this book. I write this for people who, have an interest in cultural history, especially from vulnerable communities that you're not going to see all splashed out on vacation brochures and on, and all these different travel channels all the time, right? I want white people to read this, because when we talk about slavery, we see it as like this distant thing, and it's not. It's something that is reverberating even into the present day. And I want them to see that the past and present for a lot of African American communities collapses into one. When I think about also who I write this for the ancestors I never knew. I write this for the children that I want to have one day, to know that whatever happens, you can name your ancestors several generations back. So it's for different people, but different types of goals here. But in all, I want anybody who has an interest in Black people. And I mean, not just, I'm going to teach you about racism. I'm talking about the grit of Black people, the wealth gap, the movement, like I said, the land theft and loss, the resilience, but also the different statutes in place to curtail our movement, to curtail our autonomous living, to curtail us finding that freedom on American soil, and how it stretches into the present day from the centuries-old horrific legacy, then this is the book for you.
Damn, girl, you just sold the shit out of that book.
Is that good? Okay. I gotta make it good now.
Look, I mean, you're making my job easier. I don't have to even tell anybody to get the book, because they're gonna just go get it right now. Okay. As I can just tell that you're a kindred spirit with me when it comes to research and organization. I can just tell you're a very organized person. I'm just getting that vibe from you. So I'm curious, because there are so many kind of layers in the book, and this book is not that long. So I commend you for editing and getting it down to be tight, because there is so much.
Oh, it's my editors. Let me tell you something.
The team.
The team definitely helped in terms of my process. So the way that I want to enter into this answer is just talking about the money and privilege that I got from doing this book.
Sure.
Maybe it was about a month or 2 months ago, there was a whole topic on publishing paid me.
Yeah.
And I didn't participate in it. The reason why I didn't participate in it is because my story is an outlier. I got a 2-book deal this time. My first book was a first book deal, and then I got a 2-book deal this time. And from the 2-book deal, I was able to afford a freelance transcriptionist who was fast. Who anytime I had over an interview, I could send it to her, and I knew I was going to get that back within a day or two.
Wow.
Even if I interviewed multiple people. And there was hundreds of pages of transcription.
Wow.
In all, I must have spent anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 to do the research and the traveling and all of that. So I just want to put that out there as just like a disclaimer. For me,
and that comes from your advance?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, it came from my advance. In terms of the organization, it was like a Google Drive folders, and then a folder within that folder, and a folder within that folder, divvying it up between videos and photos and secondary sources that I found on JSTOR about this particular type of people, and then talking to these particular type of people with their transcripts. It was color coded, and I think when I actually brought my family in the later drafts, that's when I started to see the synapses connecting, and I was like, oh, now I really see how if I'm going to use my family as an anchor, and I've already been looking at these other transcripts from places that I went to before, I'm seeing the pattern starting to arise already, so I know what to ask my family, and then from there, know how I'm going to start each chapter, which is with some kind of personal anecdote.
Right.
So that's how I did it.
Wow. Were there things, because the scope of the book is so huge, were there things that you couldn't include that you wish you could have done deeper dives into? Or like, because some of these sections could have been their own book.
Oh, yeah. One of the things that I wanted, and I wish that I could have wrote about, and I wrote about it so many times, and I really wanted to keep it, was the amount of all black towns that was in Oklahoma. Oklahoma at one point was supposed to be a black utopia.
Wow.
It was supposed to be a place for black people. It was supposed to be an all black state. And actually. And I think if I'm not mistaken, Jim Crow crushed it. But I think about if any of you readers or you, Tracy, if you watch Watchmen,
I'm watching that right now. Literally, okay, so that's what I was doing before I came to talk to you.
The first episode was on the 1921 Tulsa Massacre, which is one of the biggest massacres of a black thriving town.
Right.
That, there was an accusation of rape, and white people came in and ravaged Greenwood District. It was Black Wall Street at the time. And I wanted to write about more of all black towns in Oklahoma, because if any of you pick up the book, I write about freedmen who were black and indigenous people of the 5 civilized tribes who were given land allotments. And it was because of Creek freedmen and also African-American migrants coming into Indian Territory in Oklahoma that Black Wall Street existed, but also these all black towns, and they're disappearing. There's not nearly as many now. So when we talk about, I thought, what if I have the bad intentioned white reader that's just like, well, why don't these people just go get their own communities? We did.
Right.
And they're not there anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean? They were destroyed, and we wanted to be left alone. You know what I'm saying? We wanted to be left alone. They were destroyed, or it's because of Jim Crow, or it's because of intimidation to get off the land. You know what I mean? Ta-Nehisi Coates written about this in this famous The Case of Reparations.
Right.
And so I couldn't include it because I had to. It could have, like you said, it could have been a whole book. It could have really deviated off the railroad track that I was on, but they did exist, and they're not there as much anymore.
Yeah. One of the other things that I thought was so interesting, and I would read a whole book on this, was the DNA testing and that relationship to indigeneity, and how oftentimes black folks are told that in their family they got Indian in them, right? Like that's the phrase that people use. And so often when you then spit in the tube for one of those companies or whatever to trace your DNA, it comes back that you don't have Native American ancestry. And I thought that was so interesting. Can you talk a little bit about why there's that disconnect between people believing it's in their family line and then the DNA testing from these companies not showing that? Yeah,
well, think about the ghost of the one drop rule. There are black women that I not know personally, but know of, who are in the DNA 51% white or 56% white and less black, but yet they are black people because of the way they're socialized and the way that, the state treats them, right?
Sure.
DNA cannot tell the full history when it comes to Native American lineage. The reason why, for example, is a lot of times the samples that they do have, they talk like a lot of Native American communities, they originate 10,000 years ago from Asia, for example. One of the places, so it's going way back. It's not taking into account the 5 civilized tribes, for example, who were there in the 14, 15, 16, 1700s in the American South. Another thing is a lot of Native American communities don't give their blood to corporations. Why would they trust them to begin with?
Sure.
They have been brutalized. There have been so many things in place to annihilate them off the face of the map. So why would they give their saliva to these big corporate, corporations? So DNA cannot tell the full story. And another thing that I want people to keep in mind is that when we say we have a little Indian in them, just a little crash, a little history course. You've read the book, so you know. When former President Andrew Jackson, believe it was in 1830, that forced the 5 civilized tribes in the South, the Cherokee, the Chickasaw, the Choctaw, the Creek, and the Seminole, to move west of the Mississippi into Indian Territory, which is known as Oklahoma. That forced movement was called the Trail of Tears. I was never taught that Black people accompanied them on that journey. They did. Every group of the 5 civilized tribes, with the exception of the Seminoles, because they had like a taxation system, they owned slaves. And in fact, the Cherokee tribe was the largest slave-holding tribe out of the 5 civilized tribes, and they were localized in places like Georgia, where part of my family's from, in Tennessee. So I said to myself, if it is the case that the 5 civilized tribes, their migratory patterns overlap with Black communities, then could it be the case that all of our families are lying? Does that mean we're all this collective delusion? No. I've spoken to scholars who study Blackness and indigeneity in the American context, and it's like, no, all our grandmothers are not lying. Now, it's complicated. I'm not saying you can just go to Cherokee Nation right now and be like, I'm Cherokee. But what I'm trying to say is that when it comes to documentation of who is what and all these different blood degrees and all that was not so in the beginning. When these 5 civilized tribes first moved over west of the Mississippi.
Yeah. That documentation piece is something that I've been grappling with a lot recently. I don't know have you ever heard the podcast Still Processing with Wesley Morris and Jenna Wortham? It's one of my faves. And they had an episode on Aunt Jemima, and they were talking about how Aunt Jemima's family members, or the women who played Aunt Jemima in the minstrel shows, how how the different women, their families went and tried to get money from like Quaker or whatever the big company was. And they said, no, because you can't prove correctly that you are actually related to these women. Exactly. But of course, that's because the documentation isn't there. And these ideas of documentation being the end all be all is sort of like another moving of the bar, right? It's like the bar moves when it comes to Black folks because we don't have the documentation. However, we don't have the documentation because people didn't think we were valuable enough to be documented.
Exactly. But also for the descendants of enslaved Africans, reading and writing was life or death.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? It was a matter of life or death. And so when I remember, I'm going to tell you this story. Like, I actually lived with a white guy who, when I used to tell him about my experience as a Black woman, he was always like, where's your proof? Cite your sources, cite your data. And it used to make me upset because I'm like, just because my life is not cited in some academic journal or isn't validated by 10 people of the academy, that doesn't mean it's any less true. Right. And so that's another thing that I wanted people to understand. It's like, don't discard oral storytelling. For a lot of these Black communities, that's the means of survival, and we're indebted to them because of that. So yeah, I definitely wanted to really reiterate that as I move throughout the country.
Right. And even in your writing, it sort of feels like you're coming to understand that fact more and more, right? Like when you talk about having Native American blood and thinking that was maybe just a myth among your family members and not quite understanding that those oral traditions actually had a lot of weight and value. I feel like that was something that was really big throughout the book for you.
Yeah, one of the things that I wanted to talk about was just like, I'm going to try not to spoil it too much, but like my maternal grandfather and great uncle were talking about how they were connected to Seminole people. And, they had a Seminole aunt that they took, that one of their father took refuge with in the woods. And they were telling me about this Lake Okefenokee. And I was like, and they couldn't pronounce it right, but I was able to get it enough that when I went on Google and look at it,
right,
I was okay, I get what they're trying to say. And first I thought, oh, they're lying. They just talking about something. But no, Lake Okefenokee was where a Seminole community existed. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Maybe I need to listen to them more often. Yeah. That was a moment where I was like, wait a minute, they're onto something there. And then I talked to other Black people who I actually opened up a poll question to on the internet, who were like, yeah, I feel like I'm Creek and this is what county I'm from. Creek people existed there. Well, yeah, I'm from Florida and, we've been in this place for several generations. And we always said we had Seminole, but I didn't really know Seminole people were there.
Right.
So, no, I can't prove conclusively. We probably will never be able to conclude conclusively about something. However, there's some weight. And
Right.
that's what I wanted to show, was that we can't just readily discard it. There is some context that can boost what they're saying.
Right. So how did you know when you were done with the book? How did you know when you were done writing?
I knew I was done writing, regionally speaking, after I went to California. I had no intention of going to California, but when I spoke to scholars, they were like, you have to. You can't just go to the South and to the Midwest and just stop. And I think when I thought about California and moving into the present day and how I went there, what California meant for many of us, and especially African American migrants, and how we were bombarded with the same injustices that we left in a previous area code, and talking about the riots and all that, I think that is when, I knew that it was time to end. I think the epilogue of the book, there's a prologue and epilogue for those who are listening. The epilogue of the book was when I was trying to figure out, how do I finish this now? Because if we realize that, like, it's just going to keep happening, and I got narratives from people who are actually migrating again, they're going back to the South. So that's when I tried to show the cycle of it. I was like, that's how I can end it. But like, in terms of me as the writer, the chronicler of this, how do I end this? And I was just thinking about migration is one of the biggest issues right now in our countries. Now with Black people predominantly, but it is a concern. And I wanted to talk about what that means and the stakes and why we move around.
Right. And where did the title come from?
The title came from a poem by Arna Bontemps, who was Louisiana, a poet, a Nocturne at Bethesda. And he writes about this loss. Like, is there something precious that we have forgotten, wandering in strange lands? That's two of the lines in the poem. And when I read that, I was like, that's what I want the poem to be. That's what I want the title to be. Wandering in strange lands, something that's forgotten.
Right. So when you saw it, you knew.
Yeah. Because I wanted something. I was like, I don't know what to name this book. I'm really bad at titles. It was not coming to me as easily as my first book. And I was like, well, why not just draw from poets? Poets always have these just beautiful lines and these beautiful turns of phrases that are so full and yet so concise at the same time, that I was just like, let me go to poetry.
Yeah. I guess, how long did it take for you to actually do the research and the writing and everything? Not from when you finished it to when it came out, but from when you started working to when you finished. Well,
I will say, like, my book deal was announced January 2018, like a few weeks before This Will Be My Undoing came out.
Wow.
And literally after I finished my book tour at the end of at the end of February, I went straight into research mode, going to the New York Public Library, the Schomburg, interviewing people, spending hours a day, because mind you, at that time I was just a freelancer, so I didn't have the day job, and spending hours a day interviewing people. And then I spent about a week in each part, and I was able to gather all together hundreds of pages of transcription. I started writing it, I suppose, in like the summer. And I was able to turn around like a draft somewhere of like first draft somewhere of like July.
Wow.
Of that year. Yeah, I'm pretty fast. I'm a pretty fast writer.
Oh my God. I thought you were going to be like 8 years.
No. But I'll be honest with you. Like, excuse my language, but I had my ass handed to me because I went through 2 full drafts. And I was like, wait a minute, we're not hitting the mark yet. We got to bring it back. You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh. Did you ever just want to turn it in or just throw it away and be like, fuck it, I'm not doing it? I'm
going to be honest with you. Like, my body still remembers.
Yeah.
Like, this moment of my book coming out I've been flooded with emotion, because like, I know it's eye roll inducing where people are like, oh, I didn't think I was going to make it. But no, I really didn't think it was going to come together. I thought that I was too amateurish. I thought there were way too many holes. And I didn't know how to connect circles. And I remember like sitting here on this couch that I'm on just crying, because I just like, I don't know what to do. And even when like it was getting somewhere, we kept moving along, my body still was like just rigid and tense, because I was like, it's not going to get there.
Right.
So even now, like as I'm working, like, I mean, I have another book coming out, and it's a novel. And as we were going through the edits, I was like, there was something in my body that just wanted to freeze up. But like, I know they're going to tell me that we got to just bring it back again, because you're not getting it. I had this fear because of the experience that I had with wandering.
Right. When does the novel come? Do you know?
Next year.
Okay. I won't bug you about that yet. We'll save that interview for that book.
Okay.
Valentine's Day is upon us, and I've got love on the brain. Love for books. Duh, of course. Hello. Did you forget what podcast you're listening to? I love bringing you all great reads, exclusive author interviews, and behind the scenes book gossip. But I can only do that with your support over on Patreon and Substack. Our Stacks Patreon community, also known as the Stacks Pack, is where you can go for book club meetups, a private, very active Discord, and a year-long mega reading challenge to help you achieve all your reading goals. Plus, you also get that monthly bonus episode. Now, over on the Substack, you can subscribe to my newsletter, Unstacked, where I keep the book conversations going. I also give you a healthy dose of sports and pop culture, definitely some hot takes happening over there. And again, that bonus episode. If you don't have a few dollars to spare, don't worry. There are free options on the Substack and the Patreon to get you a little extra Stacks magic. Making this podcast is a total team effort, and by supporting my Patreon and my Substack, you allow me to support my amazing team that makes the show possible every single week. So if you or your friends are looking to meet other book lovers and support this indie podcast, come hang out with me on Patreon, Substack, or both. I would love to have you. And since we're talking about love, you can gift subscriptions to the Patreon and the Substack for that special reader in your life. For the Stacks Pack, head to patreon.com/thestacks. And for the newsletter, head to tracythomas.substack.com. And also, there are links to both in the show notes. Okay, see you in the Stacks. Okay, so this is some of the stuff that I love to talk about, which is kind of how do you write? Where are you? Do you have snacks and beverages? Can you write with music? Do you have like all the stuff about how does Morgan sit down to write her work?
Yes, I love this question. I'm an early bird.
Okay.
I could get up and write like 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, and I don't write all day. One, I can't write all day because I have a full-time job, but also because I don't think it's productive. If I know my stride, if my stride is from like 7 to noon, then I'm gonna do that. Okay. I have an office in my apartment, so I go in there to write because I have a desk and I can really feel like I'm doing something rather than like putting it on my lap and on my couch in my living room. In terms of music, I listen to a lot of like afternoon acoustic playlists on Spotify. Okay. I'm also a huge fan of synthwave. If you know what synthwave is, it's kind of like 80s retro music type stuff. Where sometimes there might be people like singing, other times it feels like you're in like an 80s movie, and it really chills me out. So I listen to that a lot. And as far as like, I'll say this though, when I was revising my novel, that was when the protests were happening. So now I was like, before when I was doing wandering, I was like, okay, I can write at 7 o'clock because everybody else is just getting up. They're still making their coffee. Stuff isn't popping off, so to speak, on Twitter yet. But when the protest happened, it was like immediately, like I would go to bed at 1:30, wake up at 6:30 in the morning, and it would just be on all day. So I actually had to download an app called Self Control, and it's an app where you write the websites you want to block, and you put the certain amount of time. And when you press go, you can't reverse it. So I would always block Twitter for like at least 3 hours in the morning so that I can get through that quick burst of energy before I went on Twitter. Because I knew once I saw something, I would just submerge myself in it.
Oh my God, I need that app so bad for Instagram.
Yeah, no, I don't write I don't write in the afternoons, mid-afternoons. If I write in the evenings, it's either because I like have a nap or like I'm revising. But when it comes to like, I know my stride, and I tell writers this all the time, you don't have to write all day. Some of us can't afford to write all day. For men, they can write all day maybe because they have spouses to take care of the house and the kid. Or you may not have an illness. You may not have multiple jobs. You may have money. If you know your stride, if you know, for example, I know I'm the sharpest at this hour, or I know I'm the sharpest here, just to use that time and maximize it. And that's what I do. I'm the sharpest in the early morning.
I love that. Do you have writing snacks or beverages?
Because I know if I eat something or if I drink something, I'm gonna have to use the bathroom. And I'm in the zone. When I'm really going, once I get through that hard opening first paragraph, I take off.
I see.
And sometimes my stomach will be growling, or I get a dry mouth, but I just like, no, keep going. And then when you finish your 1,000 words and everything, then you can have X, Y, and Z.
Oh my God, I love that. So you're really like locked in.
Yeah, I'm very disciplined. That's the thing I think my editors like about me is that even when I was in college, a little bit of a brag, I never did an all-nighter in college. I never did it. I would turn in assignments sometimes a week or so early. I turned in my thesis like 2 months early.
Wow.
Because just give me the deadline. Like, I don't need anyone to hover over me. Like, I've always been a disciplined person, sometimes to my detriment, because I do tend to overwork myself. I am very susceptible to burnout. But no, you don't have to tell me twice. Once I get going, I get going.
How do you protect yourself against burnout?
Honestly, listening more to my body. And I think like being in therapy now, when I first started writing, like, and when we talk about money and privilege, like I can take better care of myself because I make more money now. I can work out more. I have better insurance. I can go get my nails done or get a massage if I want to. But sometimes I just let burnout happen. And what I mean by that is like today I had like a mini burnout where I just like, I need a nap, and I asked to reschedule the meeting and to not feel bad about it. Because I used to always be the person where it was like, oh, there's an email, respond to it quickly. Inbox got to be 0. You have something to do it. Don't ask for extension, and all those things. But now I'm just like, no, this work and this career is going to be long, and I got to be here for it. So if I feel in my body I'm just not coherent, just ask to reschedule and explain why, because you're a human, and writing is solitary work. So to be more vocal and communicative, which again has helped through therapy. So sometimes when I have these burnout moments where I just feel like I'm becoming irritable, that's how I know it's approaching. I'm like, that's when you got to check in with yourself. That's when I know I'm like, all right, what's going on? Something's got to be reallocated or readjusted here.
Right.
So, yeah.
Have you found that it's different writing in the pandemic than it was before for you?
Yes. Now, during the pandemic, during the beginning of the lockdown, it was hard for me because I kept asking myself, like, why is it that I'm feeling a type of way? I was a freelancer. I know what it's like where my work and my personal life just converge, and I'm just taking on anything, anytime, because I want to be able to pay my rent or whatever. But then I realized that, I'm based in New York City. We were the epicenter at one point. And I remembered, like, well, at least when I was a freelancer back in 2018, I could still go to the movies. I could still go out to dinner. And I tell people all the time, like, from the beginning of the pandemic and beginning of the lockdown, from late March all the way to, like, the end of April, it was terrible here. I didn't hear anything. I didn't hear life. Every night, all I heard was sirens. Right. It was the most macabre setting that I've ever been in. And so my writing in the pandemic, I will say that I've been very, very productive in a sense that, like, I don't have any distractions. I don't have a family. Like, I don't have children. I live alone. And I'm healthy, thank God, and I haven't lost my job, so I don't have to work. I'm not an essential worker, so I can write, and I've been very productive. But at the same time, because I'm in the house, sometimes I'm in an apartment. I have to figure out more ways to settle down. Right. I have to figure out more ways, like, when's playtime? When are you gonna close that tab? You know what I mean? Right. So I definitely had to have more conversations with myself to be like, okay, you're gonna do this like Zoom workout class today. You're gonna do this watercolor thing tonight, in order to make room for fun, especially when the world can't offer me that right now.
Right. That makes so much sense. Okay. This is an opportunity for you to show that you're not just a super smart human, but you're also a super dumb human, which is, what's a word you can never spell correctly on the first try?
Oh my God. Abyssinian.
I don't even know what that word means, Morgan. How dare you pick a word that's like, I'm trying to get you to say something to show that you're human, and you're over here saying words I've never heard.
So there's a really famous church called Abyssinian Baptist Church, and I think it's Abyssinian was the empire that's now in Ethiopia. I can never spell that.
Okay, me neither.
I'm trying to think of abysmal.
Okay.
I can never spell abysmal. It's because of that BYS or whatever. I'm like, damn it, I can never get it. Because sometimes things aren't bad, especially in the world. It's abysmal.
Sure.
So I can never get that on the first try. I'm like, God. That's crazy.
Oh my gosh. I love that your first word was a word that I've never even heard of.
I'm so sorry. I didn't do that right.
I appreciate this about you. Obviously, you're just a genius and that's fine, but I appreciate you going above and beyond for even the word you can't spell right.
I know. It's funny. I got to say something. I remember I was on a phone call one time. I did such a jerk move. I was younger. And it was like, you know how when you're trying to spell something to an operator and you're like, A as in apple, B as in whatever. I was like, C as in cat, A as in, animal, D as in dog, E as in eucalyptus. And I was like, oh my God. That lady on the other end is just like, oh, what a jerk. Like, out of all things, you could have said elephant, you could have said egg, but you went straight to eucalyptus.
That's incredible. That's incredible. All right. This is an important question because I'm sure you're going to have some great answers. For people who love your book, Wandering in Strange Lands, what are some books that you think they could also read that kind of are in conversation with the work that you've done?
Yes. I would say to read The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkerson, Wayward Lives, Beautiful Experiments by Saidiya Hartman, Mules and Men and Go Tell It to My Horse by Zora Neale Hurston. In terms of more like narrative nonfiction that's very personal, Men We Reaped by Jesmyn Ward I think would help. I think Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. And even on the fiction side of it, Song of Solomon by Toni Morrison. I know that's like really big headed, but Song of Solomon is about a man that tries to trace his roots and because he feels rootless. And so I think that might help in terms of the themes. So I would definitely say those works.
Okay, those are all great. We've covered some of those on the show, actually, which is always nice to hear. Yeah. And Warmth of Other Suns is one of my most favorite books. So I constantly am screaming at people to read that. What sort of stuff were you yourself reading and watching while you were writing?
I was reading Barracoon by Zora Neale Hurston. Oh, God. Just that's the type of work that I would love to do for the rest of my life. So Barracoon I was reading. I was reading Saidiya Hartman, and I was also just reading like a lot of Toni Morrison novels, so like Sula, Jazz, for example. I was reading like Colson Whitehead's The Nickel Boys.
So good.
I was reading Claudia Rankine's play The White Card. I was also I love the I was reading like Roxane Gay's Hunger and Difficult Women. I was reading Salvage the Bones and Sing Unburied Sing by Jesmyn Ward, Heavy by Kiese Layman, and oh my God, just so many.
And are you reading these things to feed your writing skills, to feed your why were you going to those texts?
To feed me.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, it's hard because I'm in the publishing industry and I also edit. So sometimes it's hard to read for leisure.
Sure.
But I really wanted to read these books because they were so buzzy, and I knew they were going to help me in many different ways of just in terms of craft and style and all that. But as I was reading, I wasn't thinking in that sort of algorithmic ways. I was just like, just delve into the experiences of these characters or protagonists.
Right. Okay. And then if you were going to write your own Barracoon type book, is there a person or a kind of person or a person with a certain experience that you would want to feature? Obviously, you can't interview the last Black Cargo.
No, but it's like I would personally, because I feel bad because I'm trying to research this now and see if I can find something.
Never mind. You don't have to answer.
No, I would just say that like I want to find ways for African American experiences where the past and the present are so full of life that they're almost parallel to each other. That's one of the reasons why I do the stuff that I do. I love history. I love archival research. I love finding a way to uplift the people that we may never know fully, and that's okay. So when I think about the work of Zora Neale Hurston, I love the fact that she has taught me as a writer that I don't need to be a distant observer. I can be subjective and submerge myself in these communities and still have something to say with authority. And I think that that's what I want to do moving forward. I think also Rachel Kadzigansa, who's a Pulitzer Prize winner and who's writing her own book, she's also taught me that too. I can be subjective and I can, show the blood and the pulse of African American lives. And that's okay. So I think that's what I want to do. I want that to be the current that carries me throughout my writing career.
It's so interesting to hear you talk about that and those being your desires, because your first book I would never have guessed that about you in reading your first book, that you had this like research bent and that was something that you were so passionate about. So it's exciting. It's exciting to hear you talk about that, because it's just such a reminder that even authors that we love and that we've read their work, that there's so much more going on than their first book or their second book.
And I'm grateful for the fact that I was given the opportunity to give this, to write this, because I've always been a curious person. But I will say, it's like when people ask me for my first and my second book, like what's different, I don't know where to start. When my first book came out when I was 25, going on 26 later in that year. I'm 28 now. If for any of you are in astrology, I'm going through my first Saturn return. That's where a lot of stuff is happening in your life. And just in terms of the scope of the book, my first book was very personal. In fact, it might be, depending on who you ask, might be claustrophobic at some point. You know what I'm saying? But with this book, I wanted to show you how my life exists in the mosaic of African American history, and I can bring in my family members and other people. And that's what I want to do. And I want people to see, like, oh, she's creating a body of work now. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel privileged as a Black woman and as a young Black woman to be able to expand and to have readers who can watch me expand, who can watch me question, who can watch me make mistakes, and who can give me the space to turn it around. I don't take that for granted.
I, for one, I'm very excited to see where your next book goes, because when I think about your first book and now this book, I'm waiting for that third kind of prong on the triangle, right? To see where it lands, or to see kind of your next step. I guess maybe it's more like a line or a graph. Maybe it's not a triangle, but it's exciting when authors can do different things and are not scared to try different things and are willing to kind of figure it out as they grow. And I remember my Saturn returns well, and good luck to you.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's like my next book is a novel. You know what I'm saying? So for me, it's like it's a novel, and then it might be my second novel might build off the first novel, and I just want to be able to try. Yeah. I think about Black women across different industries. It's so easy to get boxed in. It's so easy for people to think that they know us, to flatten our three-dimensional nature. And I just want to be able to try. That doesn't mean I'm going to go into something haphazardly, but allow me to try, allow me to make mistakes, and allow me to revisit and to uncover, for as long as I can have this career. And as long as I can just keep trying and I can keep endeavoring, then I will feel more curious, and I think I will just feel fulfilled in a way, even if all these different investigations may be irresolute. That's the nature of it.
Right. Gosh, I want that so badly for you and for all of us, right? The ability to be multidimensional and to follow our passions and all of that. Okay, I'll just do one more question. I always end with this one, which is, if you could have one person, dead or alive, read your book, who would you want that to be?
Oh, Zora Neale Hurston.
Okay.
I would want Zora Neale Hurston. I would want me and Zora to be in my Harlem apartment, in a bunch of soul food. She can cook it if she wants to, or we can go to one of the restaurants here, and she would sit at my, table, and I would just pass wandering to her. And I would wrap it into a bow and say, like, this is for you. Like, I wrote this not only in honor of my ancestors and my family, but I wrote this because you made it so. So I would do that.
I love that so much. That was amazing. Morgan, thank you so much for being here. Everyone at home, Morgan's newest book is called Wandering in Strange Lands. It's out now wherever you get your books. Be sure to pick up a copy. Morgan, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
And everyone else, we will see you in the stacks. Thank you for listening, and thank you to Morgan Jerkins for being our guest. I'd also like to thank Hannah Bishop for setting up this interview. Remember, we will be discussing Sula by Toni Morrison on August 26th for the Stacks Book Club with Britt Bennett. Everything we discussed on today's episode can be found in the link in the show notes. And for more from The Stacks, follow us on social media at The Stacks Pod on Instagram and at The Stacks Pod _ on Twitter. And check out our website, thestackspodcast.com. Our graphic designer is Robin McCrite, and our theme music is from Tigirigis. Will Sterling is our producer and sound editor, and The Stacks was created and produced by me, Tracy Thomas.